The Mancini estate had never panicked. It had survived wars, real ones, with bodies dumped into rivers and names erased from history. It had survived betrayals, federal indictments, bloody power grabs, and a decade-long FBI investigation that collapsed mysteriously the night 3 key witnesses vanished. The house didn't panic. That was the rule. Because when the house panicked, people died. But tonight, the rule was breaking. 18 doctors stood shoulder to shoulder inside a nursery that sat at the heart of the most feared Mafia compound on the East Coast. Their hands shook. Their voices dropped to whispers. Their eyes refused to meet the man standing in the corner. Don Vittorio Mancini. The man whose nod decided who lived and who disappeared. The man whose name alone emptied rooms. The man who had ordered executions over less than what was happening now. Heart monitors screamed. Ventilators hissed like snakes. For drips hung from golden fixtures bolted into marble walls. And in the center of it all lay Nico Mancini, 3 months old, blue-lipped, barely breathing. The Don's only son. The heir to an empire built on blood, silence, and fear. A baby who was dying. No one said the word. But everyone felt it. "We're running out of time," whispered one of the doctors, a cardiologist flown in from Zurich under armed escort. "We've tried everything," said another, his Italian accent cracking. "His heart rhythm keeps collapsing." A pediatric specialist from Johns Hopkins wiped sweat from his brow. "This doesn't make sense. His labs are clean. No infection. No congenital defects." A Nobel-nominated immunologist stared at the baby's rash, blue-gray mottling creeping across Nico's tiny chest like a map of death. "This is systemic," she murmured. "But I don't know the trigger." The monitors screamed again. And then, Don Mancini spoke. Low, calm, controlled. "If my son dies," he said, "I will burn the world until I understand why." No one doubted him. The doctors worked faster, harder, sloppier, because the scariest thing in the room wasn't the dying child. It was the man who loved him. Outside the nursery window, behind bulletproof glass polished daily by men who never looked up, stood Eli Brooks. 14 years old. Black. Poor. Invisible. The son of the woman who scrubbed bloodstains out of Mancini carpets at 3 in the morning without asking questions. Eli wore a jacket too thin for the winter wind coming off the river. His sneakers had holes in the soles, patched with duct tape and hope. He shouldn't have been there. Kids like Eli weren't allowed near the Don's private wing. But chaos made cracks. And Eli had learned his whole life how to slip through cracks without being seen. He pressed his forehead gently to the glass. Not to watch the doctors. Not the Don. Not even the baby. His eyes were locked on something else. A plant. Sitting casually on the nursery windowsill. Dark green leaves. Pale bell-shaped flowers. A faint oily sheen glistening under the lights. The same plant that arrived 3 days ago in a velvet-lined box with a gold card that read, "For the future king." Eli's hands began to shake. He knew that plant. His grandmother had taught him to recognize it before he learned long division. She used to say, "Some killers don't carry guns, baby. They grow quietly and wait." Digitalis. Devil's trumpet. Angel killer. Touch the leaves, and your heart slows. Breathe the air long enough, and your blood forgets how to live. And Eli had seen the gardener touch it. Seen the gardener adjust the crib. Seen the gardener wipe his hands on his gloves. Seen those gloves rest on the rail where baby Nico now lay dying. 18 doctors had walked past that plant. 17 times. Eli swallowed. Because in the Mafia world, knowledge without permission was dangerous. And really speaking, could get you killed. He looked toward the hallway. 2 armed guards. Both watching their phones. He looked back at the nursery. At the blue-gray baby. At the Don who would murder cities for his son. Eli thought of his mother. Stay invisible, she'd always said. In this house, invisible people survive. But invisible people also let things happen. Eli pulled his jacket tighter. Took 1 breath. And ran. Eli didn't make it 3 steps before a hand slammed into his shoulder. Hey! The guard spun him around hard enough that Eli's teeth clicked. A gun flashed beneath the man's coat, not drawn, just shown. A reminder. Where do you think you're going? The guard snapped. Eli's mouth went dry. He had practiced this moment in his head 1,000 times. How to stay quiet, how to keep his eyes down, how to say sorry without speaking. But now the words were piling up inside his chest, heavy and burning. My mom, Eli stammered. She asked me to bring her. Wrong wing, the second guard said, already bored. Get lost. Behind the glass, the monitors screamed again. A long, flat tone cut through the hallway. One of the doctors shouted. Another voice yelled, "We're losing him." Eli twisted in the guard's grip, panic breaking through fear. The plant, he shouted. The plant by the window, don't you see it? Both guards froze. What plant? One asked slowly. The one in the nursery, Eli said, words tumbling out now. It's poison. Digitalis. My grandma, she said it stops hearts. You have to move it. You have to wash everything. The gloves, the gardener touched it. The first guard laughed, sharp and humorless. You think we're gonna listen to some kid? But the second guard's eyes flicked toward the nursery, toward the window, toward the plant. Because he'd seen it too. Radio it, the second guard said quietly. The first guard hesitated. You serious? Just radio it. Static crackled. Inside the nursery, Don Vittorio Mancini lifted his head. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout. He simply turned. And when he did, the room went silent. What is happening? The Don asked, outside my son's door. No one spoke. The guard swallowed, then pushed Eli forward rough, but not cruel. This kid, the guard said, says the plant is poison. 18 doctors turned at once. The immunologist blinked. What? Eli's knees shook as he stepped into the room. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But the Don was looking at him now. Really looking. Not past him. Not through him. At him. How do you know this? Don Mancini asked. Eli's voice barely held. My grandmother worked with herbs. She warned me about it. Digitalis. It can slow the heart until it stops. Especially in babies. Silence. Then the cardiologist lunged toward the window. Get it out, now. Chaos exploded. The plant was ripped from the sill, sealed in a bag. Nurses scrubbed rails, sheets, gloves. Someone shouted for charcoal. Another called poison control. The Don never moved. His eyes stayed on Eli. You, he said softly. What is your name? Eli, the boy whispered. Eli Brooks. The monitors stuttered. Then, a heartbeat. Weak. But there. The room exhaled as one. The cardiologist stared at the screen. He's stabilizing. The Don closed his eyes. Just for a second. When he opened them again, something had changed. Eli felt it. The air felt heavier. Sharper. You saved my son, Don Mancini said. Eli shook his head. I just noticed the plant. The Don stepped closer. Close enough that Eli could smell his cologne. Leather. Smoke. Winter. In this house, the Don said, people notice things and keep quiet. You did not. Eli braced himself. For that, the Don continued, you deserve protection. Then his voice dropped. And answers. He turned to his men. Find who sent that plant, he said. Find who touched it. And when you do not kill them. The room went cold. Bring them to me. The gardener was still scrubbing his hands when they came for him. He was a thin man, mid-40s, with dirt permanently embedded beneath his fingernails and the sharp, sour smell of fertilizer clinging to his coat. He looked up when the shadows fell over him, confused, then afraid. I was told to wait here, he said quickly. I didn't do anything wrong. No one answered. Two of Don Mancini's men took him by the arms and walked him down a hallway he had never been allowed to enter before. The floors changed from marble to dark wood. The lights dimmed. The warmth drained from the air. In the nursery, Eli sat in a corner chair, knees tucked to his chest, watching doctors move with cautious hope around the incubator. The baby's tiny chest rose and fell, uneven but alive. Eli's mother, Rosa, stood near the wall, one hand covering her mouth. She hadn't stopped shaking since the alarms began. Eli, she whispered, her eyes wet. What did you do? I just said what I knew, he replied, barely audible. She pulled him into her arms, hugging him hard. You shouldn't have spoken, she murmured. Not here. But Don Mancini had heard everything. He stood at the foot of the incubator, hands folded behind his back, eyes never leaving his son. He did exactly what was needed, the Don said calmly. Rosa stiffened. You are his mother? The Don asked. Yes, sir, she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Then you raised a brave boy. Rosa didn't know whether to thank him or apologize. Elsewhere in the mansion, the gardener was pushed into a room with no windows and one long table. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, buzzing faintly. Don Mancini entered without hurry. The gardener swallowed. Sir, I've worked your grounds for 3 years. I would never. Sit, the Don said. The man sat. You planted the foxglove, the Don continued. Who told you to? The gardener's eyes flicked away. It's winter. I was told it would brighten the nursery. By whom? I don't know his name. He came with credentials. Said he was from the interior design firm you use. The Don nodded slowly. And the money? The gardener's hands began to shake. What money? The Don leaned forward, placing a folded envelope on the table. It slid open just enough to show thick bills inside. You were paid, the Don said softly. More than your monthly wage. To plant something you knew was dangerous. I didn't know, the gardener cried. I swear. He said it was harmless. Just flowers. The Don studied him for a long moment. Then he stood. Cut off his hands, he said casually. If he truly didn't know, he won't need them anymore. The gardener screamed. Wait, he shrieked. I'll talk. I'll talk. The Don stopped at the door but didn't turn around. I was told, The gardener sobbed, tears streaking his face, that the baby wouldn't die. Just get sick. Enough to weaken him. Enough to make you look vulnerable. Silence. Who? The Don asked. Valente, the gardener whispered. The Valente family. They said it would send a message. The Don's joy tightened. The Valentes. Old rivals. Old blood. A family that had been waiting for the Mancini heir to show weakness. Take him away, the Don said. Leave him alive. I want him to remember what happens when messages are sent to my children. The screams echoed long after the door closed. Back in the nursery, Eli felt a chill crawl up his spine. He didn't know what was happening elsewhere in the house, but he could feel that something dark had been set in motion because of him. The Don returned minutes later. He knelt beside the incubator, placing one finger gently against the glass. My son will live, he said quietly. Then he turned to Eli. You, he said, voice low, will stay here. Eli's heart pounded. Sir, people who save Mancini's do not go back to cold apartments and forgotten lives, the Don said. From tonight on, you are under my protection. Rosa stepped forward, fear flooding her face. Please, we don't want trouble. The Don looked at her, truly looked at her. Trouble already found your son, he replied. I am merely making sure it never finds him again. Eli swallowed. He had saved a baby, and in doing so, had walked straight into the heart of the Mafia. Rosa had always believed fear had a sound. Growing up poor, she'd learned it early, the hollow rattle in the chest when rent was due, the tight silence before bad news, the way the world seemed to pause right before something broke. But this was different. This fear was quiet. Deadly quiet. They were escorted to a private sitting room overlooking the frozen gardens. A fire crackled softly in the hearth. Tea appeared without anyone asking. Everything was warm, polished, careful. Too careful. Eli sat beside his mother on the velvet sofa, his hands buried in his sleeves. He could still hear the gardener screaming somewhere deep in the mansion, even though the sound had long since stopped. The Don entered alone. No guards. No guns visible. That scared Rosa more than anything. Mrs. Brooks, Don Mancini said, taking a seat across from her. I will be direct. I respect honesty. Rosa nodded slowly. Yes, sir. My son was targeted today, he said. Not by accident. Not by fate. By men who want me weakened. Rosa's stomach twisted. Your boy prevented that, the Don continued. Which means the Valente family now knows his name exists, even if they don't know it yet. Rosa's breath caught. Then let us leave. Please. We won't tell anyone. We'll disappear. The Don shook his head once. You can't disappear from people who already know where to look, he said. But you can be shielded. Eli looked up. Like bodyguards? The Don's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Like family. Rosa stood abruptly. No. Absolutely not. My son is not joining whatever this is. The Don didn't raise his voice. Sit. She froze. Not because he commanded it. Because she realized he didn't need to. She sat. I am not offering adoption, he said. I am offering protection. Education. Medical care. Security. And the cost. Rosa asked. The Don met her eyes. Your silence. Your loyalty. And your son's safety. Eli felt his mother's hand tighten around his. What if we refuse? Rosa whispered. The Don leaned back. Then you walk out those gates, he said calmly, and I spend the rest of my life wondering when someone decides you are leverage. Rosa closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed run. But where? To what? A small apartment with thin locks and no guards? A son who had already drawn attention he couldn't erase? You'd keep him safe, she asked. With my life, the Don replied. Because he already saved mine. Silence stretched. Finally, Rosa nodded once. Then we stay, she said hoarsely. But my son does not touch your business. The Don stood. Agreed. He extended a hand, not to her. To Eli. You will live here, the Don said. Study here. Grow strong here. Eli hesitated, then took the hand. It was warm. Study. Does that mean I can see the baby again? Eli asked softly. The Don's expression softened. Yes, he said. You may visit your brother whenever you wish. Brother. The word landed heavy. Because Eli knew deep down that from this moment forward, his life had split into before and after. And there was no going back. The city never slept. Even at 3 a.m., the streets hummed with life, the distant wail of sirens, the low growl of engines, the muted chatter of men who dealt in shadows. Eli had never imagined this world existed outside the whispered warnings of his mother. And now he was living inside it. A week had passed since the Don's offer. Eli was settling into his new routine, lessons in language, mathematics, and the subtle art of reading people. But the peace was fragile. That night, the mansion's walls shivered with tension. Footsteps in the garden. A low whisper through the hedges. Eli's heart thumped against his chest. The Don appeared beside him silently. They're here, he said, voice calm but with steel underneath. Who? Eli whispered. The Valente boys. They know someone saved my son, and now they want to find out who. Eli swallowed. He remembered the poison, the chaos, the terror. And now it was back. Not against a baby, but against him. The mansion shifted into lockdown mode. Guards doubled their patrols. Doors were locked with reinforced keys. Cameras scanned every angle. The Don's men moved with the precision of trained predators. Eli felt his mother press against him. Stay calm, Rosa murmured, though her hands trembled. They won't hurt me, Eli said more to himself than anyone else. Not if I'm careful. A shadow slipped through the garden. Then another. The Don appeared at the top of the grand staircase, surveying the perimeter. They want leverage. They'll try to send someone inside. Eli's stomach tightened. He had already seen what one mistake could do. One slip could cost lives. Hours passed. The intruders tested the mansion's defenses. A garden fence cut, a window rattled, a gate tampered with. Each time, the alarms blared, and the Don's men were there within seconds. Eli learned quickly. He learned to notice patterns, the way the guards rotated, the weak points in the hedge line, the sound of footsteps that didn't belong. But the Valentes weren't playing small. They were relentless, experienced, and cruel. And Eli was just a boy. Then, at dawn, a single message appeared. A black envelope, delivered by a courier who disappeared before anyone could ask questions. Inside, a photo of Eli's brother, the baby he had saved. Julian. And a note in sharp, elegant handwriting. You saved him once. Let's see if you can do it again. V. The Don's face darkened as he read it. They've crossed a line, he muttered. And now, Eli, your lessons become survival. Eli felt a strange rush fear, yes, but also resolve. He had faced impossible odds before. He had fought when no one believed he could. And now he would fight again. Because this time, it wasn't just about courage. It was about family. And in the Mafia, family was everything. The sun had barely risen, and the mansion's gardens were cloaked in mist. Eli crouched behind the stone fountain, his heart hammering in his chest. The lessons with the dawn had taught him strategy, patience, and observation, but nothing could prepare him for this. Remember, the dawn whispered from the shadows, fear is a tool. Use it. Don't let it use you. Eli nodded, gripping the small blade tucked into his sleeve. The Valentes had been probing the estate all night, and now they were testing the inner perimeter. Eli could hear muffled voices near the servants' quarters, the shuffle of heavy boots on gravel. He crept closer, counting their steps, memorizing their positions. Two men, young but dangerous, were focused on the security cameras, oblivious to the child waiting in the house and the boy who would protect him. This was his moment. Eli moved silently, like a shadow slipping between shadows. He reached the first intruder, pressing the blade against the man's neck. Quiet, Eli hissed. The man froze, eyes wide. A nod. Then the blade moved to the second. With precise control, Eli incapacitated both without a sound. The Don's voice echoed behind him. Good. But don't celebrate yet. This was just the bait. Eli's stomach sank. Bait? Suddenly, the mansion doors slammed open. A dozen men in tailored black suits poured in, the Valentes' top lieutenants. They were armed, dangerous, and fully aware of Eli's presence. The dawn appeared behind Eli, a dark silhouette of authority. Move, he commanded. Eli dashed through the corridors, weaving between priceless antiques, his mind racing. Every step counted. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. A shot rang out. Glass shattered. Eli's shoulder burned, but he pushed forward, adrenaline carrying him faster than he thought possible. They reached the nursery. Julian was safe, swaddled in Eleanor Kensington's arms. She looked at Eli with wide eyes, as if she already knew what he had done. Go, the dawn barked. Get them out. Eli didn't hesitate. He grabbed Julian, ducked through the servants' passage, and disappeared into the shadows, leaving chaos behind. Outside, the city awaited. And Eli realized something crucial. In this world of power, money, and vengeance, courage alone wouldn't be enough. He would need cunning, allies, and the lessons his grandmother had unknowingly passed down. But for the first time, he believed he could survive. He believed he could protect those he loved. And he would. Because in the Mafia, survival was not just about strength, it was about strategy, and Eli Carter had already begun playing the game. The city never slept. Neon lights flickered over rain-slicked streets, and the hum of engines mixed with distant sirens. Eli crouched in a corner of an abandoned warehouse, Julian wrapped tightly against his chest, the baby's soft breathing the only sound that reminded him why he had to survive. The dawn paced slowly, shadows dancing across his sharp features. They think this is a warning, he said, voice low and dangerous. But we're not giving warnings. We're sending a message. The Valentes will learn what happens when they touch what's mine. Eli nodded. He had watched the dawn in action for months, learning that intimidation, intelligence, and ruthlessness could turn the tide of any battle. But this was different. Now, the stakes weren't just territory or respect, they were life and death. Julian's life. "We strike tonight," the Don continued. "We hit them where it hurts. Their finances, their men, their pride. You'll be my eyes in their operations. You'll know their moves before they make them." Eli's pulse quickened. The Don handed him a small envelope. Inside, photographs of Valente lieutenants, their known haunts, and their weaknesses. Eli studied each one carefully. He memorized their routines, their patterns, their arrogance. "You move carefully," the Don said. "Precision kills faster than firepower. And remember, never let them see your fear. Fear is weakness, and weakness is fatal." Hours later, Eli slipped through the city's alleys, Julian secured in a carrier on his back. He was invisible, blending with the night, shadows his only allies. The first target was a nightclub owned by the Valentes, a place where deals were made, and loyalty was bought with blood and money. Eli watched from the roof opposite the club, noting the exits, the guards, and the cameras. He moved silently, descending to the alley behind the building. Inside, the Valentes celebrated their recent victory, unaware that their world was about to unravel. A quick signal from Eli and the Don's men struck. Alarms screamed, men shouted, and chaos erupted. In the confusion, Eli infiltrated the club's main office, gathering documents and digital files that mapped the Valentes' empire. Every file, every ledger, every photograph was a weapon now. Every piece of knowledge Eli collected would become ammunition in the war they were about to wage. By dawn, Eli had returned to the warehouse. Julian slept peacefully, oblivious to the danger, while Eli placed the stolen files on the table. The Don examined them, a rare smile crossing his face. "Good," he said. "Now they know we're not afraid. And soon, they'll learn we're unstoppable." Eli finally allowed himself a deep breath. The city was dangerous, the Valentes were ruthless, and the game had only just begun. But for the first time, he felt ready. For Julian, for his mother, for the legacy he was about to build in the shadows. Because in the Mafia, power didn't come from fear alone, it came from knowledge, strategy, and the courage to strike when no one expected it. And Eli Carter was about to prove he had all three. The city woke to whispers of chaos. Word spread quickly through the underground. Someone had struck the Valentes, and no one knew exactly who. Phones buzzed, radios crackled, and the fear that Eli had meticulously planted began to take hold. Inside their high-rise headquarters, the Valentes were frantic. Screens flashed with security footage, alarms blared, and the once confident lieutenants paced like caged animals. Matteo Valente, the head of the family, slammed a fist onto the table. "Who did this? Who's playing with us?" he roared, eyes wild with rage. No one answered. No one could. They were always one step behind Eli. Every safe house, every meeting spot, every financial transaction had been compromised, mapped, and manipulated before they even realized it existed. Eli crouched atop a nearby building, Julian asleep against his chest. Using a small earpiece, he guided the Don's men, coordinating hits, diversions, and leaks. One by one, the Valentes' strongholds fell, not to brute force, but to precision and intelligence. Their money flowed into traps, their lieutenants were exposed, and alliances crumbled as paranoia spread. By nightfall, Matteo Valente was isolated, his empire unraveling faster than he could comprehend. Eli approached the final target, the Valente family's private safe house, rumored to hold crucial evidence of their criminal dealings. He slipped inside, shadows folding around him like a cloak. Guards were subdued silently, alarms bypassed, and in the inner vault, Eli found ledgers, passports, and encrypted drives. Every piece of evidence a weapon that could dismantle the family's empire legally and ruthlessly. Eli stepped outside with Julian and the files. From a distance, the Don watched, satisfaction written across his face. This was more than revenge, it was strategy, skill, and survival, all executed by a boy no one saw coming. The Valentes would rebuild, eventually. But the message had been sent. In this city, knowledge, courage, and precision could topple kings. Eli returned to the warehouse, placing Julian on a makeshift bed. The baby stirred, eyes bright with trust and innocence, unaware of the storm that had raged on his behalf. Eli looked at the Don, who nodded approvingly. "You did well," he said. "You've not only protected the boy, but you've proven that brains and courage can topple even the most dangerous families in the city. This is just the beginning." Eli smiled faintly. For the first time, he felt in control, not just of the streets, but of his destiny. And he knew, deep in his bones, that Julian's life and their family's future would never be the same. The shadows had a new master, and his name was Eli Carter. The streets were silent, unnaturally so. Even the usual rumble of traffic and distant sirens seemed to hold their breath. Eli moved like a shadow through the alleyways, Julian cradled safely against his chest. Tonight, it wasn't just about survival. It was about ending the Valente reign once and for all. Matteo Valente had retreated to the top floor of his penthouse, surrounded by armed guards and walls lined with surveillance cameras. He believed his empire was untouchable. He believed he had eyes everywhere. But he didn't have Eli. He didn't have a boy who had learned to read people, streets, and dangers the way others read books. Eli entered the building unnoticed, using tunnels and access points only the night knew. Each guard he passed was subdued silently, chokeholds, careful misdirection, the quiet click of a broken wrist or unconscious body. By the time he reached the penthouse, only one obstacle remained, Matteo himself. The Don waited, leaning against a massive oak desk, eyes dark and sharp, fury coiled like a spring. "You think you can destroy me, boy?" Matteo spat, voice low and venomous. "I built this city, every corner, every deal. And you're just a child playing at my world." Eli didn't flinch. He stepped forward, the files in his hand, ledgers, bank records, surveillance footage, and more, proof that could bring the entire Valente family down legally and irreversibly. "You built your world on fear, Matteo," Eli said calmly. "And fear is fragile." Matteo lunged, a knife flashing in the dim light. Eli anticipated the move, sidestepped, and disarmed him with a swift strike. The fight was brief. Eli wasn't the strongest, but he was precise, trained, and patient. Each of Matteo's attacks was met with calculated defense, each step pushing him closer to defeat. Finally, Matteo stumbled back, cornered. His empire, his pride, and his invincibility crumbled in his eyes. Eli placed the files on the desk, a cold, clear warning, Everything he had built could be destroyed by one boy's intelligence and courage. "This ends tonight," Eli said. "Either you surrender and face justice, or you watch everything fall." Mateo's chest heaved, rage and disbelief battling against the reality before him. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. The Don's empire would survive in fragments, but his power was gone, dismantled by a boy he underestimated. Eli stepped back, letting the weight of the moment settle. Julian gurgled softly, reaching out to touch his hand. The boy's life, protected and unbroken, was now the ultimate victory. Outside, the city lights flickered against the night sky. Word of the Valente downfall would spread quickly through whispers, through headlines, through the underground that knew every move. But Eli didn't care about fame. He cared about survival, justice, and the promise he had made to himself and to Julian. The shadows had shifted, and a new order had begun. Eli Carter was no longer invisible. He was the master of the game, the boy who dared to outsmart a king, the protector of a life that meant more than power or money. And the city would never forget it.